In this episode, we speak with Sumeet Gupta, Senior Managing Director and Leader of AI and Digital Transformation at FTI Consulting. Sumeet leads the firm's AI and digital transformation practice, advising companies and investors on business model change, operating model redesign, and value creation through AI. Sumeet began his career as an AI researcher studying deep learning neural networks at IIT, and later conducting research with MIT and the National Center for Biological Sciences. He brings more than 20 years of experience helping companies apply AI, data, and emerging technologies across sectors including retail, healthcare, financial services, technology, and industrials. Before joining FTI Consulting, he was an executive partner at Publicis Sapient and previously co-founded a high-performing computing startup. Sumeet was recognized by the Consulting Report as one of the top 25 digital transformation consultants and leaders of 2024 and 2026, and one of the top 25 artificial intelligence consultants and leaders of 2025. FTI Consulting is a global advisory firm that helps organizations navigate transformation, performance challenges, and high-stakes business situations across more than 30 countries and territories. I am your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the Executive Chairman of Market Insight Media and Managing Partner of GrowthCap. He is the host of Top Consultant, a podcast featuring today's best consultants who advise and provide services to corporations, governments, nonprofits, and other organizations. Executives and key decision makers tune in to Top Consultant to identify the most knowledgeable and experienced consultants for their most important projects.
Sumeet, thank you so much for taking the time. It's a delight to be with you.
Yeah, likewise, Rajay. Good to meet you.
So it seems you've been an expert at artificial intelligence for quite some time. You focused on it in undergrad at IIT, and then you went on to a fellowship at MIT. Maybe tell us about those early years when you started to study artificial intelligence. What was happening at that time?
This was the late 90s, early 2000s, the turn of the millennia at the time. And in college, I was studying mathematics and computer science. And at that time, different varieties of flavors of AI had been already in place, right? A lot of what was called symbolic AI at the time, which was more deterministic. But over that last decade, which was in the 80s and 90s, this new class of AI, which today we know as deep learning, or what are called artificial neural networks, they have become more and more prevalent at the time. And so I got involved in coursework while I was in IIT in relation to that. It was the early days. We had, some early papers published by researchers like Jan LeCun and Yoshua Bengio on convolutional networks. And those were the ones which inspiring, the researchers like myself at the time to explore this further. What we were also realizing was that we had to take more inspiration from biology. And so that's how I moved into more primary research after I graduated from IIT. This was with the National Center of Biological Sciences in India, which is a classified research institute in India. And they and MIT had a joint lab on neural network research, which is what I joined. So I was working with MIT and with NCBS for a couple of years. And what we were doing was looking at some parts of the brain, which were really important for learning and memory, like the hippocampus and the amygdala, which is for emotional responses. And we were looking at mice brain, right? That in MIT, there was a professor called Dr. Konegawa, who had invented a technique to knock out certain receptors in the neurons. And it turns out when you knock out the receptors in the neurons, they would lose learning and memory. So that was a good clue for us to start determining what was actually happening in these neural structures. So long story short, that was the focus of my research on building large-scale neural networks, mathematical models, computational models for that. And those early days were quite successful. If you remember 18 years back, we had those assistants that could recognize handwriting. They were based on the early techniques of these neural networks. But guess what? These networks are extremely data hungry and extremely compute hungry.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have that level of data and compute, early 2000s. And so a lot of us researchers, this class went into an AI winter at that time. And researchers like myself, we moved into more mainstream AI, which was based on statistical modeling, which is called machine learning models. So that's how I moved into the startup space, spent 15 years in two different startups, one of which I founded. But that was sort of the early stages of what was happening at the time.
Mm-hmm. And now we're in this phase of rapid proliferation of AI tools and the adoption of these tools and technology across the private and public sector. Tell us about your role now, like how you leverage that deep background in AI and apply it to business.
Yeah. So at FTI, I teach two teams. One is our broader digital transformation teams. And then as part of that, we have a AI Center of Excellence, an AI team. And we do a lot of AI work at FTI. The work that my team focuses on is mostly around business transformation.
Mm-hmm.
We have other teams that work on forensic litigation, economic consulting, lots of different uses for AI. My teams are really focused on value creation for businesses using AI models.
Mm-hmm.
That can range across a variety of topics, especially as you said, with these models becoming more and more mainstream and the barriers of entry to use them have become so low, the commercial tools available have become enormous. So a lot of what we are doing now is either on a business model vector, as I call it, which is what can you do to drive different kind of business models, different kind of monetization models using AI in your company? How can it augment your existing products and services, right? So a lot of like revenue growth focused, business model focused work. And then on the other side is more the operating model transformation. How do you fundamentally change the economics of how your business works?
Mm-hmm.
And that can mean different things, right? It can mean having a different organizational model to build your services, to offer your products. Because, for example, if you have a customer service layer in your organization, well, guess what? That cannot remain the same as it was 5 years back. Customer service in the age of AI is significantly different. So there is the business model transformation and the operating model transformation. That is the kind of work that our teams are driving. And a lot of that is using state-of-the-art foundational models. But what we are also doing is, as you probably know, we've seen a complete explosion in this space. In the last 3 years, we went from 10 models to like 20,000 plus models, which are of different sizes and shapes and flavors and domains. And so what becomes really important is how can you maximize value while minimizing cost?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what we are focused on when we're supporting businesses.
I really like the piece you did. It was a graph which showed expectation and hype versus actual, in reality, value creation potential or value creation execution. And it showed that there's a big gap. The expectation is really high right now, but eventually the value creation will catch up and surpass the expectation. Tell us about that. Is it the case where there's this fervor amongst corporations and executives thinking we need to be implementing AI into our organization because we're missing out? Like we could be either growing the top line faster or saving on costs faster. But in reality, AI is not there yet.
Yeah.
Maybe opine on that.
Yeah. So that graphic, the hype versus expectations graphic and the value creation graphic, that went viral last summer. I created that view in late 2024. And the reason I did that was, and I've been in this industry for 20 years now, and we've seen all these waves come and go. And the reason I did that, RJ, was if you look at the last 3 decades, clearly we had the dot-com revolution. And then in the middle, we had a lot of smaller bursts. Like we had the mobile phones come around with the cloud transformations. We had a massive hype cycle around crypto in 2017, 2019. And then we had some metaverse hype. And then we came to the AI hype cycle, as I'm calling it. But this hype cycle has two characteristics which are contradictory but simultaneously true. And that is what I was trying to explain, because we have a lot of investors that we advise, right, who are deploying millions of dollars of capital. And their question to me was, starting in 24, how is this real? Like, you come from a research background, you understand the technology, you've been in this industry for 20 years. Tell us, like, should we be investing capital in this as either investors or as corporates on big infrastructure? Like, is this real? And so the way that I explained this was that we, for the first time in nearly 25 years after the dot-com era, have a simultaneous coexistence of highly inflated expectations, but extremely systematic value creation, right? We saw this the last time in the dot-com era, where we had this displacement in value creation and expectations, and that created the enormous hype. Mm-hmm. What happened was that the value creation was very material. Because if you go back 20 years, 25 years, we were, for the first time, building on a combinatorial exponential scale all the fundamental protocols of the modern internet era. Mm-hmm. But it was very janky in the early days. Mm-hmm. What happened was, when you had the dot-com burst, there was a complete vacuum. There was this exhale of like, okay, these things, are not real. You had the leading economist, you had Paul Krugman, who went to press in 99, 2000, I think, in New York Times, saying, the internet will never amount to anything more than a fax machine. Mm-hmm. So why is that important? Because what happened was, the subsequent 7 to 8 years, we had a lot of the mature enterprises who stopped paying attention because they thought this was all a lot of hype. But the value creation was happening exponentially. Mm-hmm. Exponential curves, the way it works, you blink an eye for 5 seconds and you can get flooded out. So the reason I built the curve was full circle to explain that I'm seeing that same dynamic play out now with AI, which is right now the expectations are very high. So a lot of what we're seeing is hype. Mm-hmm. But trust me, what is happening, I have not seen in the last 20 years, the kind of material value creation happening on all fronts. Fundamental research at the model layer, at the infrastructure layer, at the network layer. It is tremendous. It is exponential. And so my advice to investors and to executives is, don't let this worry you, but you cannot not pay attention. This is not like a crypto hype cycle.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the sectors that's in sharp focus is software, because the traditional software companies, it seems, may become outdated or outcompeted. And then there's the potentially insider's view of software CEOs saying, well, no, like, we're entrenched with our customers. It's very contextual to understand how to provide the appropriate solutions to these companies. And we're going to build our own AI on top of our software. Do you work in kind of the software sector catering to these types of companies?
We do entirely. So we have a tech sector practice. We work with SaaS companies, numerous software companies, IT services companies. There's disruption trends everywhere. So yeah, across the gamut.
And what's your view? Is this downturn in the software segment of the public markets, is that overblown? Do you think people, by and large, investors, public investors in particular, by and large, have got it wrong? These software companies are going to persist, and they're going to not only persist, but thrive.
Here's what I'll say. Like in any revolutionary cycle, there are going to be winners and losers. So if I look at some of the big software firms, if they are able to adapt really fast, and if they are able to replenish their moat, they built a moat for the last 20 years. They should be under no illusion that that moat has not been eroded. That is what is causing the decline. I do think it is somewhat overblown, right, in the near term. In the long term, it probably is not, right, assuming that they can actually work fast and go back to their digital native roots and work as AI natives and really make the AI innovations they need to make. Mm-hmm. If they don't do that, there'll be winners, there'll be losers, and there'll be new AI natives that'll come. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like in the CRM space, when we're advising clients, I'm already seeing an influx of newer firms who didn't exist 3 years back. And their products for certain applications is vastly superior, right? And we have clients for the first time willing to adopt them versus mainstream packages.
Mm-hmm.
So that is happening. Now, is it true that they can be acquired? Yes. Is it true that their innovations can be replicated at the same speed by a bigger tech? Yes. If those things can be true and they can build a moat, the new moats, not the old moats, great. Otherwise, there are going to be some companies that will lose. And there are going to be some companies that, and we've only seen that in the last even 2 years, we've seen some companies actually lose their assets and go bankrupt.
I like this concept of the new moat. And how do you develop that new moat? It seems like it's anyone who knows a domain very well could learn how to use AI and build something fairly quickly and start selling it to the market. So how do you build a defensible and durable moat?
Yeah. For me, again, anytime you're in a revolutionary cycle, you start from first principles. You have to start from first principles. How do you ever build a moat? You ever build a moat because you have some unique IP, you have some unique advantages, right? Based on that IP. That IP can be anything. It can be you have unique data, you have exclusive access to customers, you have exclusive distribution access, you have exclusive knowledge of workflow or domain, and so on and so forth. And that is my advice to my clients, which is if you look at your portfolio of assets, there are some companies that probably will not ever have a moat anymore because they don't have any exclusivity. They had no kind of IP or a meta IP around some aspect of business economics. If they don't have that, they will get disintermediated. So there is a little bit of first principle thinking involved in terms of if we build for the future, where is our unique IP that we can really own and leverage? I'll give you a very recent example. Back in 23, I was asked by a lot of investors on who would become the Google of the AI models. Now, there was a big distinction between what happened with Google versus what happened with these latest class of AI models, back in 23 at least. Back in 23, a lot of the models were based on the same underlying mathematical IP. Google had a very specific IP on their PageRank algorithm at the time, which is why they were able to create that distance over a decade. That did not exist for the models, which is why you had a proliferation of these foundational models with Claude coming in, ahead 1 month, and then Gemini, and then Chat GPT, and so on. You see that race like every 3 months. And that's as they start building more and more IP and patents. And the same thing applies to SaaS and any other industry, frankly, right?
You had mentioned earlier in the conversation that there was this dead period or ice age with AI where the compute was limited, data was limited. Where are we now with compute and data? Is it still a constraint, or to what degree is it a constraint?
What I will say is that a lot of the models that we are working with today, they are based on symbolic content, right? A lot of the large language models are exactly that. They're large language models because they've ingested a lot of the data exhaust from the digital era of the last 30 years. All the internet exhaust, all the forum content, the publicly available text data, etc. That's all being used for training code bases, mathematics, etc. All symbolic content. And that's made it very useful. What's going to happen moving forward is we're going to ingest different kinds of real world sensory data to train different kind of model classes. That data is going to be more analog, the way we as humans experience it. So it'll be higher density. It'll require more compute as well. So I do think that we will reach a bit of a barrier in terms of compute and data availability, try and surmount that by the next inflection point. And I'm already seeing that. We're seeing, now different kinds of very specialized chips that are going to be built in the next 4 to 5 years. We're going to be seeing different kind of models, which are not going to be based on symbolic data streams. So I do think that for current models, we probably are okay with the compute, but not for the next inflection.
Excellent. We're entering into the tail end of the conversation. I have 2 final questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
Oh, I wouldn't say there's one person. I can't say one person, but I would say that a lot of my formative thinking was on a class of existential authors like Kafka, Camus, and Nietzsche.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that corpus
Mm-hmm.
has influenced me the most in the way I've brought my thinking to even how we live and how we work.
Mm-hmm. Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
I love traveling, and specifically I love diving, and I love doing solo backpacking. I find both activities very meditative,
Mm-hmm.
while you're kind of in your own head a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
which all of us need at this time, right? We need to be in our head a little bit more. And so those two things help me a lot.
Do you have a favorite place where you've gone diving?
Yeah, it's Indonesia. Eastern Indonesia, it's the islands of Raja Ampat.
Awesome. Sumeet, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a great conversation.
Likewise, Ajay, very nice talking to you.